ora. Kutia te riko o te hara. Te ia te poma ko e ko. Ki mai kia ho. Kia te pranui o te ao. Mā kue kia tu. He tangata. He tangata. He tangata. Ti he maura. Ko tere tiri tuatahi. Ki te pūro tuatua. Nō reira. Tēnā koe te kaihanga. Ko koe te timotanga me te mutinga o ngā mea katoa. Tēnā koe. Tēnā koe. Tēnā koe. Ko rangi nui e tui ho nei. Ko papatua nuku e takoto nei. Tēnā korua. Tēnā korua. Tēnā korua. Ko tēnei pai e tui nei. Ko ropa tape. Tēnei te mihi. Tēnei te mihi. Tēnei te mihi. E mau mahara nā mātou. Ngā mate maha o te motu. Haere. Haere. Haere atura. Rātou ki a rātou. Tātou ki a tātou. A tēnei te mihi. I ngā rangatira. I haere mai kōnei. Nō reira. Tēnei te mihi ki a koe e te whai alone. Tēnei te mihi ki a koe e te whai alone. Nau mai, haere mai, whakatau mai, kei roto i tēnei rohe o kaitahu. Nau mai, haere mai, whakatau mai, kei runga i tēnei whenua o Araituri. Nō reira, nau mai, haere mai, whakatau mai. E hari ana mātou, i hare mai kōnei, ki te hakarongo, tō kōrua, kōrero, tō kōrua, mātou ranga. Nō reira, tēnei te mihi, tēnei te mihi, tēnei te mihi ki a kōrua e ngā mitia. Ka nui au ki te kōrero ki a koutou katoa, ngā toa o tēnei kaupapa. Hakarongo ki te hau, e kōrero ana te hau. Hakarongo ki te kore. E kōrero ana te kore. Hakarongo ki tō ngā kau. E mohio ana ia. Kia kaha. Kia tū. Kia maia. Kia kōtahitanga. Kei roto i te wairua o aruha me te rangi mai. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā hui i tātou koutou. Kutia te rito, kutia te rito, te hara keke, keia te poma koe ko, ki mai ki au.
When I let some of my neighbors in Washington know, as we were shoveling the huge piles of snow, that I was going to New Zealand, they said, because, you know, in Washington it's kind of a company town. A lot of people are either in the press, or they're in the activist groups, or they're in government. And they said, can you try and find out why the hell New Zealand is rushing into this TPP? Like, why is this country that could not be farther away, 16 time zones away, hosting a signing of an agreement, according to the the U.S. fast-track procedure deadline. You know why it's February 4th? That's 90 days after our procedure of notification to the U.S. Congress. What the hell does that have to do with New Zealand? And so why is New Zealand sort of doing the puppet thing and having this signing? And then what is this business about the prospect of there being implementing legislation in the New Zealand Parliament sometime soon? And the thing that's particularly curious for everyone in Washington is they're saying this because they know what your formerly trade negotiator, now ambassador to Washington, he of the dead rat swallowing. It's unclear to me that your ambassador is actually being, it's shocking, but he may not be fully transparent about what he knows is going on in Washington. So let me share it. This is the reason I came over here, which is the TPP is in serious doo-doo in Washington and around our country politically, and right now, there is not a majority in the U.S. Congress to pass the damn agreement. And as Jane pointed out, that's really important because the way the damn thing is written, unless the U.S. and Japan pass it, it's a 5,000-page doorstop. Now, the thing about it that is sort of important to know, because the signing's coming, and I think all of our governments are trying to do this psych job, which is, they sign this thing, and that's like the end of it. All of you protesters, and there are lots of them in the U.S. too, just pack it up. You lost, it's over, go home. And the thing of it is, and I just want to share, under the U.S. Constitution, our president, or he's saying the trade ambassador, they can sign an agreement, the executive branch, in ink, blood, gold, whatever. But if it is not passed by simple majorities of both our upper and lower chambers of Congress, constitutionally, it never goes into effect. So absent having a majority in Congress, the thing they don't, that agreement cannot go into effect. Which is very important to know as other countries are being driven to go over the cliff and start to implement an agreement that may or may not ever happen. Because here's the scenario that I find just chilling. And unfortunately, I've seen it in some other countries where the U.S. has had free trade agreements, which is the U.S. does this sort of psych-out stampede maneuver, and the other country ends up implementing the changes to their domestic laws that would be necessary to put the agreements into effect. You have to conform all your domestic laws, so the changes Jane was talking about. But then the agreement never goes into effect. But you've already changed your investment law and lengthened your copyright terms and blah, blah, blah. And you basically have swallowed a bunch of the poison for an agreement for which there are ostensibly some upsides, but as Jane's made a compelling case, and as a recovering trade attorney looking at sort of the trade part of this, of which it's very, very small, there is not a lot on offer with lots of downsides. And you could be signing up for the downsides by implementing the agreement without ever getting the upsides, which there aren't really any upsides, but you're going to get all the downsides without any of the upsides if you implement before the thing ever gets approved. So, for folks who are thinking, well, maybe this lady's just suffering from a lack of sleep after all this travel, and this is not an accurate picture. Let me share some details from what's going on in the U.S. Number one, just sort of symptoms of political doo-doo for the TPP. And that is, there is not a presidential candidate in the United States, from the Democrats, from the Republicans, from Mars, oh yeah, that's some other Republicans. There is no candidate in the United States right now who's polling over 5% in any U.S. state who is for the TPP. I kid you not. Like Bush, 2%, very sad. 2%, I'm sure his family is very ashamed. 2%. The man is not going to be president. But anyone who is like in the, I'm breathing in this race still, 5% and up, Democrats, Republicans across the political spectrum, they're all against TPP. And within the parties, they're starting to fight about who's most against TPP. So, as we were landing today, I'm looking at my email and going, you must be kidding, because there's a Bernie Sanders news release that says, If I were president, not only wouldn't I implement it, if it were already passed, I would veto it. I'm thinking, is he going to talk about shredding and burning the text next? And the reason that came up is because Hillary Clinton had said she was against it as is, which left open a little door of what does that mean. And she listed some of the changes she wanted, some of which are things some other countries would never go for, like binding currency standards, which could be very useful for New Zealand and the US, by the way, but would give Japan severe heartburn. I don't think Japan signed that agreement. But because she left the little door open, and Bernie came in and said, my door is shut and I have nailed in it. And then Trump, basically challenging the other guy, said, not only wouldn't I pass this agreement because it's very, very stupid, which is what he said, but all of you are too stupid to negotiate good ones, so you are so stupid that the stupid agreement will be even more stupid, so I'm going to make sure. They literally are fighting over it. But this is not normal in our country, because like you, we're a free trade country. Right? This is not normal. I want to make clear. This would be like here, the current government and labor are having a TPP hate-off. And in the US, this has happened in part because, point two, the polls show in our country, which is so polarized, all joking aside, because to work there in Washington takes a lot of gallows humor. It's actually a very scary and sad time. But it is so polarized, no one agrees on anything except right now polls show majorities of Democrats, Independents, and Republicans oppose the TPP. For very different reasons. But for each person, there is a reason that gets them, that when the pollster says, do you think this is good for you or the country, people who can't agree on whether a stop sign is red or blue are saying, we hate the TPP. This is important because that's what's reflected in the presidential race, but also this reflects in Congress. So when I say there are not votes in Congress, a little bit of the math. So folks here got tortured having to watch our internal family 3-year fight over fast-track trade authority. It's like, it's only when you leave the United States that you realize what an outside influence these lunatic things that happen in our country, people in other countries have to suffer through watching. Because what happens on fast track is going to decide whether or not the TPP deal is going to be made. So the fast track vote, it almost didn't happen in the House of Representatives. And I want to put in perspective how rough it was, because for Obama, this was like the come to Jesus campaign. I mean, he pushed on health care. That looked like a picnic where he was snoozing compared to what they did on this. He was flying half the Congress home to visit their mothers in Air Force One to try and get their vote. I mean, that's only a very small exaggeration. He took more people on Air Force One flights in the course of 9 months than he had in the previous 6 years of his presidency. And they all just coincidentally were swing votes on fast track. It's just, it's small. It just happened that way. So after that kind of a fight, folks should know fast track passed in the lower chamber in the House by 5 votes out of 435. 5 votes. So a very hard-won fight to just sneak it across the border. And since then, one of the Republicans publicly defected on his own in writing saying, this agreement sucks. And just from New Zealand perspective, the funny thing is he's from upstate New York. He said, we got hosed on dairy. New Zealand caved and we didn't get the access into Canada we wanted. So here's an American guy basically saying we all got rolled on dairy, which is kind of funny when you think about it. What about the other 4 votes? So with all of that pushing, Obama only ever got 28 Democrats in the whole House of Representatives to support fast track. And about half of them said, we'll give our president the authority, but this is not our vote in favor of the TPP. We want to see what comes out. And a funny thing happened between the fast track vote and the prospect of a TPP vote. They saw the text as compared to what they'd been told by the administration was in the text. And in fact, instead of, for instance, an environment chapter, that at least was like what Bush did, because a lot of these guys are kind of cheesy, they kind of want to cover their butts and vote for TPP, there's a lot of corporate money sloshing around. So a lot of them set a standard that they were sure the TPP could meet. They just said, I'll be for it as long as the environment standards and the access to medicine standards are at least as good as what Bush had. That, my friends, is a very low standard. And the TPP fails. So Bush got forced into having the enforcement of 8 multilateral environmental agreements, part of the environmental standards in his trade agreements. The TPP whacked 7 of them. It's down to 1. And so there's now language that basically says things like, we should be friendly and nice to fish and dolphins. Now, there's language really says we should all strive to avoid policies that undermine marine mammals and large fisheries. And then the tariff schedules have things like tariff cuts on shark fins and whale meat, which is to say trading in the critters that the non-binding part of it theoretically, and they took out the treaties that actually had to do with the oceans that used to be enforceable. So, lost some votes on that one amongst the Democrats. On the access to medicines, as Jane said, it's a roll. It's mortifying. It's a rollback from what Bush was forced to do, and this biologic stuff is a part of it. But also, just we think it is a purely moral issue, not what's going to happen to us in the developed countries. But all Bush's agreements basically gave special and differential treatment to the developing countries, so they didn't have to meet the same lunatic standards. There were lunatic standards, but not everyone had to sign up. The TPP makes everyone, Vietnam, everyone, go to that same ridiculous standard. So there were some more Democrats. Then there's the investor-state issue. Jane mentioned what it would mean, but the Democrats are very nervous about this, because we keep hearing in the U.S. the same thing you're all being told about investor-state. We have such great courts and such great laws. We're never going to lose a case. We're never going to get challenged. You guys hear that from Key and Grosser all the time. We hear the same thing. Well, the reason why you guys haven't gotten challenged and we haven't gotten challenged is, amongst countries, relatively speaking, we don't have a lot of exposure. You don't have a lot of investor-state agreements. We have 50 of them, but they're like the U.S.-Rwanda bit. There are no companies from Rwanda in the U.S. invested who could sue us. It's the Costa Rica, Guatemala, Honduras. I can go right through the whole of Central America and the Caribbean agreements. And there are no investors. So overnight for the U.S., the TPP would increase that liability by 9,500 new Australian mining companies, huge Japanese multinationals. And so the Democrats were all looking to see if the text fixed some of these horrible openings in investor state. No, it expands the claims you can make and the kind of laws you can attack. And just in case you want to make it personal here, we actually got the database with all the corporations. You try to tell friends about this investor state stuff, and in my experience they say, she's making that up. That cannot be true. Like 3 corporate attorneys who rotate between suing governments and being the judges. They can't be appealed. They can make a government pay unlimited amounts of taxpayer money because some foreign company elevated to the level of a nation state decides they don't like a policy that they think violates some rules they got in some agreement that somehow they can privately enforce by rating our trip. Really? Nah, that can't be true. Well, I have the list of the 1,608 U.S. corporations alone, geo-mapped on the map of New Zealand, some of them in this very town. So you can see the new companies under this agreement that would be empowered overnight were to go into effect to attack New Zealand policies, regulations, and decisions. So you can make it very concrete. Here are the companies, the litigious U.S. companies, that would newly make it very likely, actually, New Zealand would get some attacks. So looking at all this, as Jane said, the $15 billion NAFTA case by TransCanada over that pipeline, the Democrats running away from the TPP. But then, it's even worse for the Republicans. And this is the part that's kind of disgusting. It's a great catch-22, though. So there are a chunk of Republicans who don't like the TPP because it's a threat to sovereignty. They hate ISDS. Some of them are just very principled, and they say, we love all this horrible corporate stuff that the agreement does, but it's not to be done through a treaty. That can't be reversed. This is what we have Congress and courts in the U.S. for. We fight it out here. This is not constitutional, even though we like the contents. And down the road, someone could use it to impose something heinous, like a labor standard enough, so we can't have that. So you've got some of those guys, and those guys are firm, but it wasn't enough to stop fast track, right? Where did the next, literally 24 plus Republicans they've lost? Because right now they're about 36 votes short on TPP. What happened? Well, they are the ones who represent the 500 U.S. corporations who are the official trade advisors. Yes, under fast track, there are 500 official U.S. advisors, almost all of whom represent corporate interests. And while Congress, the public, and the press cannot see the text, they actually have a ringside seat and get to advise and see the text. So those guys sitting in the catbird seat are used to getting 110% of their demands of what should be in a trade agreement. And given things like on IP, it's really bad, but it's not as terrible as it could be. It's just really, really bad. They are totally flipped out. They cannot live with having 97.8% of what they wanted. They have to have 110% or else. So they have gotten the Republicans, from the representing the pharmaceutical interests, tobacco, because there is an exception to investor state in tobacco. That's like the only nice thing in that agreement is a real exception. You can see what one looks like. It's like a unicorn. Look, a real investor state exception. Then you can look at all the fake ones that are supposed to cover health, environment, and you go, oh, the real one. Shit, the real one. So that makes them nuts, because it's a real exception to investor state, and how dare you, it's tobacco. So this is what they're demanding. This is a real problem for New Zealand. A bunch of them are demanding that in writing, every TPP country agree that the 5 years extra exclusivity is actually 8, and that in a few years down the road, you consider moving it to 12. And they want signed letters to basically change what's in the agreement right now, which is there in part because New Zealand pushed back, among other countries. Then, number 2, they want a letter from every country saying that no country will use the exception for investor state on tobacco. So it will be there on paper, but never pulled out of the drawer. And they're saying that if they do not get this, the 2 leaders, Republican leaders, are saying they will personally see the agreement go down. They'll wait for a new president to come, and they will force the things that they want. Now, a lot of folks are now saying, yeah, but here's the thing, isn't the damn agreement being signed next Thursday? How can they do this? They haven't gotten away with it yet. And this is sort of the final warning, which is one can change a trade agreement through what's called a self-executing post facto amendment by sign letter. Let me translate. What that is what we did to Korea, not me personally, but we, the United States. So you have a trade agreement that's done. Last time we had a second-term president, leave and dodge, desperate to get another trade agreement, on his list of things he did, that would be George Bush the Younger, he signed a trade agreement with Korea that everyone knew could not get through the U.S. Congress. Just was not going to happen. So he signed it anyway, and he gets the Korean parliament to pass it. Hello, New Zealand parliament. He gets them to pass it, they implement it. And then he takes it to Congress, and Congress is like, for the last 3 years we've been saying if this stuff is in here and this stuff is not, we're actually not going to pass that, so what part of this didn't you understand? We're not going to pass that. Bush leaves office, the agreement's not passed. It sits there moldering on the shelf. Everyone in Korea who voted for it in Parliament is going, oh my God, every year goes by. Finally, Obama comes in. 2010, he realizes things not getting done. He goes back to Korea and says, so sorry, so sad, but you have to give us more concessions. Which in the case of the TPP is going to be the meds, is going to be the tobacco, who knows what the hell else. And he came back and extracted more stuff from Korea. And you say, but how they change it? It was passed, it was signed. So what these letters do is they basically, I'll translate out of the legal language, it says, as soon as this agreement goes into effect, the next second after it goes into effect, we agree it's automatically amended in the following ways. And then Congress passed the agreement in 2011. The agreement went into effect, and for 1 nanosecond it was a thing Congress wouldn't pass, and then the letter kicked in. And effectively, Korea had to give more concessions on autos, on various agricultural things, etc., and boom, it was an amended agreement. That is what we can expect with TPP. The bottom line, the takeaway is the text that everyone's trying to get jammed down their throats by their governments right now is not the text that can get through the U.S. Congress, which is why this is far from a done deal. And whether it ever happens, because it ain't happening anytime soon, depends on the catch-22 I described. Because, consider it, if the Democrats are walking away from TPP because of already what the intellectual property rules are, imagine if the Republicans get their way. So the things the Republicans need to get more votes yes takes away more Democratic votes. So the catch-22 is how the hell do you ever get the 218 votes, half, a majority in the House of Representatives, if those Republicans are demanding something that loses the Democrats, given it's down to a 4-vote margin. So with all of that, the timing, it's a remote chance that there will be a big push in July before Congress goes on recess to have a vote. It will be largely like a kabuki dance to make it look for the other countries so they start doing their votes, like we're going to do our vote, but that's extremely improbable to vote. There's a very small chance there could be a special session of Congress called a lame duck session after the election. It's It doesn't always happen. Could be a vote there, seems unlikely. The thing is, fast track is a one-use tool. So they will not start the vote process unless they know they have the votes. Because if they started the vote and they didn't have it and they had to pull it off the floor to avoid it being voted down, they've thrown away the fast track they spent 3 years trying to get. So they won't start until they know they have a majority, and right now they're so far away, it's probably going to be 2017. Which gets us to who the hell's going to be president? Well, if Clinton is, she's making Japan somehow amend the agreement to have binding currency rules, which I don't think that's happening. And the other ones, like I said, are going to figure out who shreds, shish kebabs, or grills the text on its way out. So given that, the notion of rushing into approving the agreement and starting to implement it in New Zealand is super dangerous. And sort of as a closing point, I know New Zealand likes to be the first. It wasn't until I started working with Jane and actually came here on TPP that, and this is no offense, I realized really how tiny the population of your country is, relatively speaking. Because you guys punch way above your weight, right? I mean, like, just growing up, it's like, that's the country that went nuke-free first, ooh, New Zealand. You hear about all these great things, and you think, you guys are down here in the bottom of the earth, and you sort of look at the map, and you're like, that's kind of a small territorial area, but the map is never fair. It distorts everything. Until you realize, oh my God, your whole country has a population the size of the DC metro area. And then you realize, actually, New Zealand punches way above its weight, and it really is often first, amazingly. This is not something on which you want to be first. Started with her wonderful welcome, which is, this is a very bad thing. And for all the psych ops that our governments are trying to be, that we don't know what we're talking about, because I get the same thing as Jane. I'm like one of the people in the U.S. that's actually read the whole damn agreement. I can cite the provisions. I actually know what's in there. I've watched each amendment of it. I can tell you what the provision was 3 years ago, 2 years ago, the final. Yeah, for all that we don't know what we're talking about, we're ignorant, we're protectionists, we're backwards, all of those things. What are the alternatives? We're going to miss out. As one of our partners from one of the Latin American countries said, when walking away from the U.S. agreement that was, we don't want to be left behind, he said, I frequently want to avoid being left behind if what's being served is poisonous. So with all of that psych out, the main takeaway is this is not done, this is not dusted, and this can be dust-binned if, as Tanya said, we're all working together. So working together within each country, across communities, across ages, across interests, occupations, but also working together between the countries. Because I guess if there's any message, it's, in the U.S. we keep hearing, we love this agreement. We don't just love it. Right now, it can't get through our Congress. I mean, it's in trouble. And so we all working together internationally have a real chance to dustbin the agreement. And then we can think about the good part of globalization, which is to say the pictures that Jane's been taking, I'm sending back to inspire our protest on signing day. I know you're doing a lot of stuff around here this weekend and on the 4th. For us, it's the 3rd is the date line, so our protests are on the 3rd. And we can start thinking about what would be a good way to have rules in the global economy that actually work for all of us. But we can only do this. We stop at TPP, which I'm recording here with all of you.